So I have 3 questions, and then you have 3 questions.
Yeah.
Okay? So my first question would be, can you tell me what kind of work you do, where you work, and what is your specification in your work?
This was a very easy question. So, maybe some of you heard or watched our work during these years. Maybe the most viewed investigation of us are Black Lobby, La Lobby Nera, an investigation on and we filmed for 3 years with an undercover journalist, an undercover reporter. We told the story about this group that wanted to influence politics from the inside, and they did. And we documented everything during these 3 years. And at the end of our investigation ended when those politicians, in particular the member of the European Parliament, Carlo Fidanza, who was the number 2 of Brothers of Italy, Fratelli d'Italia, asked us for a bribe, a very huge bribe. And we couldn't give him a bribe. So they planned a very sophisticated of this bribe, very cinematic one. They planned everything. they did all the work for us. Salvatore, in the September of 2021, meet Roberto Yonghi Lavarini, that is known as the Black Baron, his surname inside this word. And he said, how can we receive the bribe? So we told the bribe is very huge. We need a trolley. You will recognize as a red trolley, a red bag. And the Black Baron gave us the password. Red as the blood, as red as the fire. This was the password. So we encountered Porta Venezia. They had the bag, but instead of money, they found inside the bag books about Constitution and books about Shoah. So it was a very unpleasant discovery for them. But the first thing that they thought about wasn't, this is an undercover investigation by journalists. They thought they want to test our fidelity. They want to test us. Then, after hours that we didn't answer phone calls and text message, they started to think, maybe they are Secret Service. Oh shit, they are Secret Service. And then only after 3 hours, when we aired the first part of the investigation on La Sette, that is a private channel, they realized, oh, that was an undercover investigation.
Okay, it's a very interesting story. So I have many follow-up questions, of course. How can you make sure that, like, why is this a proper way to do it? Why do you have to do such a lot of work? Because how do you make sure that you did not force them to be corrupt? You know, you go there, you dance as a rich person. Maybe you seem very attractive. That they think, oh, I want to become corrupt. So where is the line between it? How did you make sure that this is fine? So this is one question. And the other one is, I was stuck when you said you published it and then they understood, right? When did you confront them? And when did you ask them to give comment on all of this? Normally, I know we do it before we publish, now it seems not. Maybe you can also say a little bit about it. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question because at the time, we collaborated with this channel. So they wanted to also to give up their effort to do the work, making something for these works, not only showing our investigation. So they went to all the politicians involved in the investigation to get comments and reply, but before that was hired. So before that was published, those people were confronted by journalists. They asked for, you asked for bribes, and they were shaking, literally, like this, shaking. It is, I was like heartbroken because, yeah.
So they came and asked, your channel you worked with was asking, was confronting. And then they
aired the pre-recorded these interviews. Then the investigation was aired because it wasn't so long. It was like 15 minutes of 15 minutes of investigation, and then they showed all the replies of the people involved. So, like in this investigation, we didn't get a comment from the people that we involved in the investigation. But was shocking also for us because they had the 100% certainty that was a real operation. They never thought could be an undercover operation. We were like a honeypot. Our journalist was posing as this very influential, very wealthy person. He never talked about money for 3 years. Never, ever. They knew that this man could give them a very advantage, like an economic one, even if we didn't talk about. And at some point, when the election was very close, they needed money. They needed money. So they said, can you pay for us some election party? Like what? If you want to do black, you go black. And he was like, really? Black? Yeah. But don't talk about it because people talks. And then they asked for money, and we said, how can you can receive black money? So we can show you the system. And so they showed us the system of the washing machine to wash the black money. And so we did never ever pass the line. We can talk about secret plan against Germany. There is a very outstanding investigation that you did. I have a question for you that is more analytical and not only on your job. We did. You published secret plan against Germany in January 2024.
Yes.
We published Meloni Youth in June 2024. And then Channel 4 Dispatch published the investigation from Hope Not 8 in October 2024. Every investigation on far rights and far rights, sympathy for fascism and the return in some way of fascism was started in the very same month, like September, October, November 2023. From your point of view, from Germany, what was the spark that made you want to do this investigation, and how all those investigations were made in the same window of time?
It's very simple. It's because there was a European elections coming up. And you could see how the European far right is preparing. And then we as editing rooms are saying, what is their plan? How do they create a large wave of voters all over? And I imagine the same is happening in England, the same is happening here. I don't know how you see it, but it was a time where we were all asking each other, what is their strategy? And if you want to know the strategy of the far right, you cannot go there and ask, what is your strategy? They will not tell you. And so you have to go inside. And I think we were not the only ones thinking like this. Do you agree?
Yeah. In Germany, how is perceived undercover journalism? How you are like a failure in the system, or you are like the demonstration of this failure, maybe, like you are the leak?
No, I think there is a, so we talked about the marriage tavern, and it's interesting to look at journalism, how it developed since the 70s. When, is it two sources, two anonymous sources is okay in Italy as a means of uncovering the truth, right? You can just, is this the same here? You can show two anonymous sources and that's fine? Is that
fine? In Italy we have three or four anonymous sources.
Okay, yeah.
Not, yeah.
I mean, it really depends on the story, but like there is this like thing with anonymous sources where it was not okay to use anonymous sources for reporting, because then, you know, who can check if it's right or not. But then came the Marriage Tavern, and the Marriage Tavern was a story you just mentioned, where they did this whole bar. They created, in Chicago, the city was known for corruption, and it was the Chicago way. Everybody knew it. You couldn't change it. This was accepted. If you want to open a bar, you have to bribe the person who's taking the electricity, who's checking the water. You have to just bribe them, and then you can open a bar. And people knew it. If you would report about it, nobody would go and tell you openly, because then they cannot open their bar anymore. Because then, you know, police and everybody would close it down. So the only way to do it is to do it undercover. And how do you do this undercover? You cannot disguise as a policeman, because this is a corrupt person. So they got a bar. They literally, all the reporters went and were selling beer, okay? For 3 months. And during this time of 3 months, they had a double wall, and in the wall there were other reporters filming. And then they had a 26-day series, and every day another story, and whole Chicago was reading every day, waiting for the next story of the Mirage Tavern. And it became a huge thing, and the whole corruption scheme of Chicago was investigated by the state police, etc., etc. It was really, it changed a lot. They almost got the Pulitzer Prize. This is the most important journalism prize in the world, I would say, or one of the most important ones. And they got nominated, and that's when the other journalists were coming and saying, wait, I want to have the Pulitzer Prize. And they started to create a smear campaign against the small Chicago Sun in Chicago, saying they did not do proper journalism. So how can you tell this? By saying a journalist is never lying. You cannot lie. If you want to get to the truth on the way, you don't lie, and you lied. You said you're a bartender, you were not, you're a journalist. So it worked. They did not get the Pulitzer Prize. And since undercover journalism got down, the culture of undercover journalism, since then, was like going down, and they had to find another way to talk about corruption, and that's why two anonymous sources were the only way they could do it. And two anonymous sources in the USA today are normal. You can just rely on them. I mean, on a Me Too story, I would say, depending on the case, you have to have 6, 7 anonymous sources. But anyway, so this is a story of like how the historically undercover got smeared. I think undercover, as long as you do it in a high ethical way, and you can prove that you do it in a high ethical way, it's fine. It has also a little bit the thing of adventure, like, you know, the cool people do this, there's this risk-taking, there's this, like, it feels a little bit like a special story, it's clicked very well, so it's coming back now a little bit, I think, because of this, like, it's super cool to do it. But it also has always this like, potential to be smeared by saying you're a secret service. Or you are worse, even worse, you're an authoritarian secret service. So in Germany we were compared with the Stasi, right? The Eastern German secret services, because they were wiretapping people. So we did not, there was never anybody of CORRECTIV publicly saying that we wiretapped anybody, but they felt wiretapped because we were able to tell exactly what they said inside the room. And so the Nazis tried to make it a secret service smear campaign with it. We are just like worse than the authoritarian secret services of the past of Germany. This is how I would explain the thing, but yeah, the problem is, of course, when I talk about it and I tell what it means to do undercover work, it is emotion. It's not just ethically hard, it is emotionally hard. You cannot just go somewhere and lie to a person and go home and be just relaxed about it, right? It is always a human being, and as you said, it broke your heart when they were shaking. We are still able, except your pathological anomaly, you are always able to connect with the person in the room, and if you want to work with them in an undercover way, you have to, like them. Otherwise, you do not get further. So genuinely, you are getting in touch with a person. When two human beings touch tenderly, in terms of speak, voice, all of this, it's beautiful. Even though it's a Nazi, it's a corrupt person, it's someone who is doing, still also the same person is a nice person, it's possible. So this is the difficult part, I think, because you have then to be able to push the person and say, okay, but still I'm now publishing the moment where you trusted me and you told me that you want to be corrupt and invited me to something very bad that is very important for society to know that you did this, and I'm now breaking this trust, which is hurting you on the emotional level. Therefore you have to play with morality, right? You have to put yourself above this person. I am allowed to do this because my standards are higher than yours. I am speaking the truth for society. And this is so important. And there's no other way to get this, that I'm now doing this. If this is something you can't do like this, you cannot do alone. Because if you do it alone, you're a narcissist. If you do it you have to do it with colleagues, you ask them, you discuss it, you look at the case, you go step by step. And when everybody around you, and double and triple check, you say, okay, it is important. Sometimes you do the whole thing, the person is telling you all this, you have the material, and you don't publish, because it was not as important. It was not, then it's, that's the difference to a pranker or something. A pranker is just pranking, it doesn't matter, everybody's laughing. But in the moment where you're doing it in a journalist way, it has to have certain standards. And that's then the difference, where then they can call you whatever they like. If you went through all this, you can stand and say, no, it was the proper way, we did it the way we had to, and we wouldn't do it without any standards.
How you manage to build trust with your targets? And before letting you ask, I want to say one thing. In Italy, and I think also in Germany, we have one of the most common books to read as a student journalist is Kapuscinski. You know Kapuscinski? No? So neither in Germany. So in Italy and broadly maybe in Southern Europe, we read Kapuscinski it talks about empathy. The journalists have to have empathy with people. The empathy is the key. And also these things is not so present in USA. They are scared about empathy. They think about the journalist has to be very precise, very cold people that tell the truth. How you build empathy? How is the empathy present in German tradition of newspaper? And the second question is, how do you work with your team to do an investigation? So it's a very huge teamwork. So how did you manage to use empathy while you are on the cover, and how do you work in a team?
Okay, the way I gain trust, I wouldn't say publicly, because it's very it's like there's different methods, and also this is part of the toolkit where I wouldn't go into details publicly too much. When it comes to empathy, it's not something you can really gain, I'd say. It's something you have and you do. I mean, it's and I can't always do it. It requires time. It requires an open heart. It requires strength to be able to see the other. And so it happens that I do a story, that I do investigate, I go into something, and I'm so much into the person, and I see so much of the person, that it needs another colleague with less empathy to be able to see the story. Because I say, but they don't mean it. You know, they're kind people. Like, why? I totally understand them. Like, it's just she's just lost, you know. And they might say, no, they're not lost. They told you 3 times that they are planning to do this. It's a conscious act, which is not okay. And that's only when I'm like, okay, maybe I was too close to the person, and I was too kind to the person. So it's not like one person can do it. You need a team to do proper journalism. You need a team to understand the story, to see that there is a story, there is something special, what you found, or whatever. So, but yeah, empathy is something I can't really elaborate. I mean, I would be a machine if I would like start to like disentangle the little parts of empathy. It's going towards a human being. It's like putting yourself aside, listening with the ear. You know, there's one ear when you're listening to someone who is always trying to connect it to you, right? I say something and you associate where does it resonate inside of me, and then I say something about me. Or you're listening and you really try to go to the other. And you listen and you say, oh, but how come you got there? What is your youth? What is your parents? What does your house look like? What is your job? What does the structure around? How can I associate it further to you and not to me? So this is what I would say is the other ear, right? Of listening, of looking, of understanding, which is not saying, I hear you, and I place it into my category of course you think this because you're a fascist, or of course you think this because you're a woman, or a man, and then you're unable to see the other person, because or maybe you see the structure, but you don't see the person, right? So this is the empathy part. When it comes to the team, I mean, yes, of course, we have a team that has a certain structure, we have people with a lot of experience, but then you have also to have a certain madness in this teamwork, right? Because if you do experimental risk-taking things like this, there's a certain drive, a certain tension of coming from A to B. And only if you have this tension among the team people, if it's only one person with strong tension, they will leave them behind, right? And then it will be, you can't work together. If you have all these people with a certain tension, one is saying, wait, you have to be careful, you have to check all the sources, can we go back a few steps? Please read the books about them before you enter the room. Have we really thought everything through? And the other one saying, let's go in, we have to. Then you have this tension, right? And then you've got the energy level up to actually do risk-taking stories. The third one is saying, okay, I'm calling the theater, we have to bring it on stage. And the third one is saying, no, we're journalists, we don't go on stage. And then you start thinking and developing and fighting for the cause, right? Not because you want to be the best in the team, but because you want to understand the other and you want to like shape the diamond in a way. This kind of strengths and different characters, like really like the characters who are courageous, the characters who are ready to carry like the publishing afterwards, who say, I'm going to be the one who's standing there, so I really want to check, double and triple check that everything is fine. The third one who is thinking in a very social way, thinking like, what will the other colleagues in the room say when I publish this? They have to love me. So then this is characters. And if you combine all these things, one who thinks, I really don't give a shit what other colleagues are saying, and that's why we can break the rules, right? And as long as it's like ethically fine, and so only with these different characters. So the one is attention, the other one is like a diversity of people, and I don't mean just diversity of gender and race and etc. I mean in classes. I mean a difference of characters and of ideologies. If everybody is like in a very clear, I don't know, leftist thinking, they might not be able to see other things that goes beyond this.
Your bubble.
Yeah, the bubble. No, but also ideology. Like really, the ability to say, well, yes. Like if I'm standing here and I see the conservative and the right wing and the reactionary and the traditionalist and all the different people, and say, well, they're right wing. You don't differentiate. You can't. But if you're further on the right, you say, well, I'm a conservative, and I'm definitely not like the I don't know, monarchist kind of a guy, So it helps to have people with different perspectives on a political matter. Other than this, looks that they're well paid, because this gives a lot of security. And it doesn't, otherwise it's everything they have is identity and status. This will break the team, because if you don't have money, you have ideology or status, which is very, very dangerous and for long-term cooperation. Then security, make sure that when you publish, you don't have fear for your life. Again, security is an important matter, not just internally, but also externally. So you have to have good operational security, you have to have secured phones and laptops, and you have to make sure your address is not public, where you live is not public. Ideally, the person, your partners, nobody knows if you've got kids. You have to have a certain secrecy about your life, private life, so you're not attackable as much. These are things, you get used to this when you do this kind of work in the area of extreme far right. In other domains, I think it doesn't matter. In the lobbyism, they will not come and kill you, or not in Germany at least. In Colombia they do, or in Peru they do.
They can kill you also for less.
Yes.
Also for asking questions.
Yeah, sure. Anyway, so this is, I would say, the teamwork and the empathy. The other one, I just leave it.
Okay, so.
Shall we open up for a few questions from the audience?
Have you ever perceived with a sensation, maybe the suspect, that your own behavior might influence the environment and in a way stimulate such behaviors or news you're looking for?
Yes, and in both cases, it's the team that makes the difference. Because you're a human being, right?
Sure.
This is something, yes and yes, both is the case. And this is why I'm happy to work in a big team. And it's hard sometimes. Colleagues are discussing things and they say, look, this is this, and oh, that's so bad, and I'm going to publish it. And then the other colleague is saying, you don't know anything about it. This is the reason why they do this, this is the reason why they do that. And this guy, I know him since 10 years, he is, a Russian propagandist, but he's the only one in this whole organization, and they can't kick him because he's got a good contract. And it's not the whole organization that is pro-Russia. And then the journalist who did months of work and was like, oh, but I thought they're Russian, pro-Russian, they're a authoritarian organization. The whole thing crumbles. So we're so happy to have a big story. Sometimes also, I had colleagues, and it's very hard because they are not successful, and then they have the big story, and they want to show all the colleagues, and they say, I have proof, and I have this, and then you have to ask the person you're investigating before you publish, and you say, look, why is this true? Like, we found out this and this and this. And they answered, they said, it's not true. Here is the detail why it's not true. And sometimes I remember one colleague of mine, he was like, he didn't even read properly their answer. He was like, haha, of course they say it's not true, haha. And then we were fighting, and like we were saying, look, your story is dead, and I'm sorry. And you are still not having a big story, You would love to, but you're not. And you're still a good person, but the story is dead. So this is for the second part. For the first part, now it's a bit tricky, the question for me, because if I am intrigued by the other person, I still am. And I can tell you about one story of a person where, I'm not going to say her name, but it's a young woman who I saw the first time during an undercover, and it was all old men in the room, and she was a young woman, and I was sure she is the granddaughter of one of those people, and she's just accidentally there. And she looked a bit anorexic, so I felt like, poor little girl. And after 1 hour, she was on stage and having a speech, and I was like, what is she doing there? And turns out she was their superstar. She was a YouTuber who was, for these old men, the future, the hope, and she was, and still until today, I always see her and I feel poor, troubled little girl. Even though she is by now being acknowledged by Elon Musk, and like people are saying she is, important, whatever. There were interviews, and my decision when I saw this is I'm not going to publish her name, her face, nothing. She might be a troubled young girl who has issues with herself, and here are people who applaud. She might not even be an anti-Semite.
And this was your only personal decision. No one else was involved in this decision, but you.
Well, I convinced my colleagues.
Okay.
I said, let's protect her. It's enough to tell the story, even though the story is becoming much more juicy with a little girl who is, the proto-fascist little girl, more clicks and everything. We protected her. And all the other media pushed it up. And I think it's horrible. I every time I see this, and I see how now Elon Musk is, talking about her, I think like, don't. She is so lost. But by now, it's like 5 years ago or something, it might be part of her personality. It's like, it's hard to differentiate. I mean, she's not a little girl anymore. She is now a proper fascist, to say, But still, it's a cycle where I didn't want to be part of, and it was my empathy. It was my, let's say, my love for the human being I was seeing in front of me, and I broke with other colleagues who I discussed it with, and they said, no, we're going to put her in the center of the story, and I'm never going to work with them again. And I told them, then this is over. The cooperation will not continue because of this person. So it can go very deep. It can be very. It's like if you have ethical. It's an ethical thing for me.
I think it is very interesting. It never happened to me something like that, but we always, every story that we talked about, have this moment. It's like when we write down all the script for our video, because we made primarily video investigation. We said, these people is in or is out. The way in which we see the thing. Our compass is if this person is of public interest or not. So is a politician or is a politician wannabe, is involved in politics, he or she gains public money for his job or her job. So this is the first step. But there are a lot of people that are not in this case, that are very interesting for public. Like we published an investigation on a nun. The investigation is called Shalom. This nun had a very large rehab community with people beaten, sexually violated, harassed, insulted every day. And we showed with a very long undercover investigation. She's not recognized by the church, but only by some archbishop, which she was very befriended. But she wasn't earning any public money. But it was a very great public interest. Hundreds of people were getting there because also some prosecutors sent them there because it was also very linked with the prosecutor, with the justice. How is important this person for our story? Because there are a lot of people that we get rid of inside of Meloni Youth's story. And we never talk about them, never.
You get rid, like you don't write.
Yeah. We didn't mention them. We didn't show any image of them.
Yeah.
Because this is a very powerful method, very powerful tool, but also very extreme and violent. And we have to use it proportionally. And then the other question. We too, we have this kind of teamwork that help us. This is the real key of our work, because we tend to be too involved. Mainly the people that go undercover. The reporter Selena Frasson was very touched by stories that people inside the camp of Fratelli d'Italia, Brothers of Italy, told about the reason why they came out in politics. They were very moving stories, very moving. I was crying watching the footage because they were moving, and she was so touched. She said, they are very good people. And then I went a little bit off, like 30 minutes later, where they go, see Kyle! And she realized that they weren't so much good people. Everyone had a very moving story, a very touching story. Everyone is a bad man, a bad people. Is not black and white. They are shadows. They are shadows of gray also. So the fact that a man, a woman is a fascist or an extremist or a person that wants to blow up the parliament or something like that doesn't mean that these people don't have affection, doesn't have people they love, reason that moves. Of course they have all those reasons. But we have to count on everything. Not only the bad thing that we tell in our stories, but also all the other shadow that we don't talk about so much.
Yeah.
Congratulations from me as well. I wanted to know, what do you think was the biggest impact of your investigations in the public debate, for instance? We just saw that a far-right movement was outlawed in Germany today, I think, and we've seen the Mancino propaganda fascist law being used by a prosecutor recently, which is very rare. So what do you think was the biggest impact, if there was?
Yeah, so, I mean, CORRECTIV has done many stories. One of them was Cum-Ex, where they were able to show and unveil the way that the financial market is robbing billions of euros from taxpayers in a so-called legal way. And this, I think, made a big impact. I don't know if, did anybody hear about Cum-Ex? Cum and Cum-Ex, Cum-Cum? It's, yeah. So, yeah, it's really like terrifying how much they're stealing, these banks are stealing from the public. So, and then there's other ones where, for example, the, how you call Nährwertsteuer, so there's a certain financial trick that is still happening, that they uncovered, and it's still happening in Italy, in Germany, all over Europe, and they don't change it. So I look at it every time and I'm like, why don't you change it? Why does nobody discuss it, right? It would be possible, they don't. And it's costing 12 billion a year to the German state, 12 billion a year. So there again, I mean, one thing which is very obvious for me, which had the biggest impact was the secret plan against Germany story, where we uncovered the Nazis, because they were, I mean, publicly it was, I think, 3.5 million people going on the streets afterwards. And you can see there was laws that have been changed, there were, the discussions have been changing a lot, and a lot of organizing in society to create, also the constitutional court in Germany has been secured from an attack and taken over by a fascist government, if it would come one day. Things that you cannot say because of A, B happened, but it changed the discourse. And then all over, I believe this wouldn't have been possible politically if there wouldn't have been this pressure from the streets. And now you have the biggest AfD, which has not been banned. You mean another one, right? You mean the king of Germany who has been banned, yeah. But the AfD, which is a big party, they have been publicly by the secret services been recognized as and that's a legal category in Germany. You can, when the Secret Service can observe you, and after a year of observation, they will make like a, you know, when you get at school, you get a good mark, you say, here you passed, they passed as proper fascist. And when you're a proper fascist, or a proper right extreme, so it's called, he is guaranteed to be right extremist by the state, then this has consequences. This has consequences in the view. So now they start discussing, are people who are part of the party, who are donating to the party, allowed to have weapons? Are they allowed to be in the police? Are they allowed to be in public service like teachers, in courts? And it's not a one by one, it's not that everybody is now cleared and they're kicked out of school, the police and everything, but it might lead to an investigation. So that everybody now has to talk and say, okay, I believe in the Constitution and I belong in democracy. And if they cannot prove it, they might, you know, lose their job or have some kind of consequence. So this is developing because it's such a huge thing, and it's a democratic party, or I would say it's not a democratic party, but it's a democratic party which is playing the game of democracy and part of democracy. That it takes time, but yeah, so this was the biggest party, as the biggest report. And also because in this report we were able to show exactly what the root problem of the party is, and it is and there is no English word for it. It's the Nazi idea of the blood of the Germans, which is better than the blood of other people. So you can translate it maybe with white supremacy. But historically it's a Hitler shit, you know. And it's the homogeneity, that they want to have homogenic people. and that nobody with other blood should enter this community of Germans. And this ideology is very specific for German fascists. I think the Italian fascists are not so, or maybe correct me, are not so blood-oriented. And white supremacy is less at the height as the German, but you can correct me. And you can see in the Secret Service, how you call it, the thing they wrote now to say we looked at them and they definitely are right extremists. The core is what we also pointed at. So I think it had an influence in the discourse. And I am very skeptical of secret services, but I think because we hit the right thing, that it had such a wave. And we were not just saying, oh, they're fascists and they're doing bad things, but we were able to really look at what are the points and how do they do it and who is meeting with whom to do this specific thing and why is it dangerous, and then it had an effect, yeah.
The biggest impact of our investigation is, of course, the participation of people who wanted to participate in showing of our investigation in public. They organized also a public show in front of the Italian public television, because the Italian public television didn't mention for weeks of our investigation, of course, because the Italian public television is politically controlled by the parliament and obviously the government, because the majority is the same. So our investigation became part of popular, popular culture, pop culture. So this is very funny. Also, it's a very impactful sign of our impact on society. In Italy, for a political movement to be banned, it's very, very hard, because they had to reorganize the fascist party, the exact fascist party, not our fascist party, but that fascist party, with the same ideology, with the same structure, and there is no way, because it is like trying to reorganize the Victorian era in England. It's something, it's so it's counterintuitive. It's like against history. No big party, no big movement is touched really by this law. Of course, because it's written in a certain way and also is interpreted by a judge in a certain way. The movement that are banned are like made by 12 people, 20 people, very insignificant parties. It's not a, and so we know in Italy we have three level of judgment. So we have to see if after all this level of judgment, this little movement is disgregated or not.
According to your current understanding, are Alternative für Deutschland and Gioventù Meloniana seeding elements of neo-fascism in terms of your expectation, at least, a future political evolution?
Say again, the question is, what do we think how neo-fascism develops? So what do we think where it's going?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. But there was another question, so we can also collect maybe.
Did you ever try to, let me say, provoke your counterpart and trying to get more information about what they are planning? And that's the second question. If you add the feelings that from, proclaiming slogans, they had the idea to make something, to if they were ready to use violence. I don't think from Gioventù Meloniana I didn't catch this kind of impression, but it's different to document something and have just the feelings from your relationship with those guys. And if you didn't make this kind of question to your counterparts, why? I would like to understand.
Yeah. No, I mean, okay, first let's look at what do we think where it goes, and this is a very broad question, and it's like, of course, it's just speculation, right?
Sure.
My fear I see mainly is the international perspective, because you have an international situation where the biggest power in the world are leaning towards authoritarianism or are fully authoritarianist. So if it's China, Russia, and now in the US, we are looking at the dismantling, the active, powerful dismantling of any democratic base. And the question is, if you look at the US specifically, which I think it's a reorganization of the global powers, what is Europe going to make with it? If you want me to be an optimist, I would say Europe has now a chance to say, refugees welcome. From the US, all the scientists who can't work there, you can come here, you get less money, but you get freedom. We welcome anybody who wants to live in a free world. We went out to colonize the world, to teach freedom. Now maybe it's a time that people can just come here. And to develop a culture. The big tech is trying to attack Europe, to break the laws, the European laws that are regulating big tech. If we are able to keep this and say, look, maybe we will not have AI porn in every school where kids can plug the USB stick in their heads and do like whatever. But therefore, it's going to be boring, right? It's going to be way more boring than in the US. I'm speculating here. But therefore, it will have some human rights, and it will have some privacy rights, and it will have some, regulations that are not making, and I say AI porn just as an example of what is happening right now all over the world, and evangelical Christians in the US somehow don't seem to stop that. I don't know why. There's some weird disconnection with what they're preaching and what they're doing. But this is my hope, that the old Europe, as Rumsfeld called us, has the power to say, well, we have certain ethics and we have a certain way of looking at the world that is maybe not accelerating like China does, like US does, like Russia does, in all different ways. Still, the question is, what do we do with the global south and how does this develop? This would mean also that the axis of Poland, Britain, being not part of the EU, but still Germany, France, Italy, stands strong. And you know more about Italy than I do. I think it's not super easy, and France is also right now the question what's going to happen at the next elections with the fascist party or the right extremist party and so on. So I have both inside of me. One is very optimistic that there is still possibilities and there is democratic counter-organization to keep press freedom, to keep certain democratic liberties, and to have this as something also I believe that we do not want to lose. We had now 70 years more or less of liberties that we got used to, and this is I think a difference to the 30s, right? Where there were still a lot of monarchists who were angry that the king is now not the king anymore, etc. So all this is not too bad, and my hope would be that now the authoritarian movement is trying, and it's collapsing in the US, it's collapsing in Europe, and in Russia, and this would be wonderful, right? The journalist rule book is don't intervene, all right? So, and this is the difference between an activist, a troll, a prankster, and a journalist. The intervention in the moment where I really push, then it's not okay. You will normally notice, but this is now, it's very subjective, as I said, you will normally notice when is a moment where you're really pushing for something, and when you're actually, I mean, the moment where I put a suit on, is this a push? Maybe it is. If I put a suit on and I go to a place where everybody's very poor, it's a push. If I put a suit and I go into a bank, it's not. So, you know, and so it's something, there's not the one line, but it's a balance. And I did undercover in like climate, for example, climate deniers, lobbyist networks, and I was going to conferences, I was talking with the bosses, and at a certain point we were talking about money and how much does my client, can they give for their fake news propaganda machinery? And I said a number, but it was part of the world, but it could have been understood as push. However, it was obvious that we are sitting here not for fun, but the question is, and so what I want to know is, what if I would give you this money, what would you do? And the nonchalance with which there was a rule book and coming on stage and saying, well, we create a fake conference with fake scientists and we will and two of them are from Harvard, and then we have this YouTube conference and 5 channels. And this was not because I said, here's money, right? But it could have been used against me, totally. And I think then again, it's a fine line. You do this, you see the reaction, and then you can still decide, do you publish or not, right? Because then if you see, oh, maybe I pushed too much, this is not a story, you know, this is not okay. So this would be an answer to this.
So I will start from this part because it's very interesting. When I said that we never ask for the thing that we wanted to do, is not because otherwise it's provoking, but because it strengthens the fact that they wanted us to do it. So when they think about this girl or this guy entering their system, they will think, oh yeah, I invited him. They have this bond. So if they fail, they will fail. So it's their responsibility to make these things working for everyone. So it's a way in which we create this kind of bond. To answer the other question, I don't think that national youth, Meloni youth, say this is an impact of our investigation, because the real name of the movement is National Youth, and now everyone calls it Meloni Youth. It's our investigation, so this is another impact. So the more threatening thing that they have is they are not fascist. They are not fascist at all. They are not fascist. They grew up thinking that fascist ideology is their tradition. But they are not fascist. They push every part of themselves to make this thing legit. To make this ideology, this tradition, legitimate for everyone. This is hegemony. This is how hegemony works. So it's making step over step over step over step to push everything in a way. And they are doing this, but they are not fascists. They use fascist mottos, they use Nazi mottos, they really think that all those things is their tradition. They have a tradition to be carried for the future generation of their movement, of their work. this is the most threatening part. But they are not fascists. They will not go anywhere beating people or censoring newspaper. They maybe will do in future all these things with other methods. So this is why Mancino law and all the other law, they are against the fascist ideology, against fascist apology, against fascist, the rebirth of the fascist party are useless because fascism has other things in our society changed. And now, here in Lombardy, here in northern Italy, there's a movement, it's called Realtazione, it's called Loyalty Action. They go like they organize football match against pedophiles, whatever it means. All for propaganda, all for right-wing propaganda, for radical, because they are Hamaskin, they are basically white supremacists. So they do everything, all these things that are not connected. If you watch from the other side of the street, say, oh, look at all these guys, all these bald guy, fully tattooed with the swastikas, and think, wow, they are so nice. They're helping this granny with groceries, but this is a mask. This is another way to represent themselves. And so they can be banned because they are not the Mussolini fascist party.
In questions how you relate to institutions, also questioning what you're doing. What are you doing for avoiding the rise of neo-fascist movements? Is it a topic, or you just go towards the movement and see what is needs to be documented about that, which is of course necessary? And so
no, we are suing the institutions regularly. We are, like, as a CORRECTIV, we are suing them several times a year, again and again and again, and we are very aggressive against institutions. So the Secret Service, for example, we are suing them, I think, 2 or 3 times this year, just because we wanted them to publish their investigation on the far right. We said, you cannot keep the secret, we need a transparent institution. And we know that the Secret Service, the German Secret Service, is very likely to have built up Nazis in the past. And that it has been founded by Nazis. So you had the Second World War, and the inner and outer Secret Service, so the BND is the one who's working outside of Germany, and the Verfassungsschutz, the German one, has been founded by former National Socialist Party members and experts on the Nazi Secret Service. So the history itself of the institution is critical. Then the last, no, not the last, the one before, head of the inner Secret Service of Germany is a renowned far-right extremist. And he found a party that is being seen as a right extremist party. He left it, a new one came, who did a much better work, and is not a Nazi, all right? But still, of course we're critical. And we have to be towards the state, and this is when, also when you talk about, there's a German word called Rechtsstaat, rule of law. The rule of law, I think in many heads is being misunderstood as law and order. Rule of law is the contrary of law and order. Rule of law means that the poorest and the most precarious people are being secured from the state. And law and order is a propaganda word for very strong police beating up the poor, or whoever, right? But also the poor, also terrorists, and also, you know, whatever. But and I'm making it very extreme now. Of course, it's not so simple, but to make the difference, I try to paint those two things. So to say this, if you want to have a lively democracy, you have to have journalists who are always questioning and critical towards state institutions, their history, their structure, their interests, etc., etc. Then we do our work and look at the movement and try to do our investigations and are critical towards also organizations and, you know, not just the state, but any kind of organization. And let me just say 2 words to the 8th of May. It's very complicated in Germany because it's the Nazis who lost the war, and then in the beginning the society reacted with, oh, but it was just an elite who was doing the Holocaust, right? The moment where the war was really lost, the only way to cope was to say, I was not part of it, for our grandparents. I wasn't able to understand the gravity of what the Nazi elites were doing. It was just an elite, right? Only with the time there was a consciousness developing for, okay, actually, I did not go into the opposition, that's why I was part of it. And so then it became to a kind of, we are so sorry. And this kind of like performative sorry saying. And so it's very tricky because there's a German culture of like post-Holocaust culture that has become, you know, we sometimes being weaponized and used also against in a racist way. Like if people are demonstrating for the freedom of Gaza and Palestine and are clearly against Hamas and are clearly, you know, like, you know, together with Jewish, Israeli leftist movements who are countering Netanyahu. It can happen that, and not in every case, but that the German state is forcing repression, saying these are, you know, black men, Islamists, anti-Semites, all this together, we as Germany have to like make sure that they don't have a voice, and then they lose their basic human rights. So there is a danger in the Holocaust memorial work Germans do as a state, you know, against the institutions. And I think we have to be, again, they're very critical when we do, and I would call it memory work or memorial work, because it's labor. It's like to go into the archives, to talk to your parents, to your grandparents, to, you know, go to the Plätzensee and understand what actually happened, how it could happen, how it went so far. This is work. And it's unlike the Brits and the French and the Russians who say, we won the war and we fucked up the Nazis and we're not looking at our fascists, but we did this. It's another culture in Germany. And it's hard, it's a lot of work, but there are also parts of Germans who do great work and mean it and really go into the memorial work. I just want, I need to answer when you ask me this.
I don't really know what to say about this this same issue transported here in Italy, but of course, neither corrective, correct me if I'm wrong, neither fan page take any funds by government. So we are totally independent media. In our case, we are funded by a publisher, basically. I think that this kind of independency helps you to be more frontal with power. We don't have like our editor-in-chief, Francesco Cancellato, and also another journalist from my same newspaper, was spied using the Paragon software. It was an Israeli military grade spyware, very intrusive, like Pegasus. Okay, for sure, there is an interest by the power. We don't know yet which power to know what journalists from this little newspaper are doing. How they can predict the future with their undercover journalism. How they can investigate the reality with this very impactful, disruptive method. They could ask how, and we can answer with journalistic intuition. Before someone, I don't recall who said, like, we can do a thesis, but of course, no one of us is starting from a thesis. We start from an hypothesis, an investigative hypothesis. This investigative hypothesis, most of the time, is a sentence, it's something affirmative, right? It's like, regarding this kind of evidence, I can say that inside the youth movement of Giorgia Meloni, there are a lot of people that have fascist behavior. It is an hypothesis, and we have to verify it, because our work is, as an investigative journalist, is to ask ourselves those hypotheses and verify those hypotheses. If these hypotheses are true, we publish. If those hypotheses are not true, maybe we publish. Because sometimes a lot of interesting things that occur in our work also comes out from something that we believed were like totally different than the way it is. And then we verify it, and we verify also the contrary. And maybe these things are more interesting than the hypothesis in which we start. Having this kind of independency is a value, and is also really luck, because we don't show the Secret Service, but we ask them very politely with FOIA, Freedom Information Act, something, and they obviously sometimes don't answer, don't respond to our question. But the power keeps pushing on this independent newspaper. In Italy, we have a lot of cases of this power suing journalists for the thing that they write. I want to remember this, because this is a very great affliction of our job here in Italy. A lot of freelancers sued by ministers or very wealthy politicians for hundreds, thousands of euros or millions of euros for defamation. And there are some legal cases that are going on for years and years. There is a journalist in southern Italy that is this legal case open for 25 years. It's crazy.
Wow.
And this is the way in which power can affect, without censoring the independent journalism.
Did you find something in the society that brings you to think that something was happening and that was a big issue that was important to transform it into a report?
You mean it last big one?
No, in the society, something that happened.
But in which case? One specific case or generally?
Well, in Italy, I know something because I'm Italian.
Yeah.
Maybe in Germany, I don't know what was happening before you.
Yes, and absolutely, that's the way the brain works, right? It's like we try to understand, and you look, and you're like, is this the truth? Is this real? And then it's this curiosity, this constant curiosity to try to find, is there actually something else happening? And sometimes you're like, I see something, and I tell it to somebody, and this other person says, ah. And then half a year later, you're like, no, I see it. And then someone else might be like, oh wow, that's true, you know, like, and then you continue. And so this is the main way I think the mindset is, right?
Okay, yes, but there was something specific that happened, maybe some episodes about the rising of this mentality.
Yes, and then there's the specifics. And then sometimes there's a moment where you see, okay, this party has so many percent. Or, you know, like this decision has been taken by the court. Or, like, and finally, the most important specific thing is the source is coming towards you and says, I have something for you. I want to tell you and show you the direction to go.
So it was through the source, not for your personal observation that something was...
It's always a mixture. So we go out in the world and like for years and years we say, this is what we're interested in. I'm publishing a text, I'm saying, you know, Milano, the city of flowers, it's so beautiful, and they have these amazing flowers, and nobody like thought about this before. And then there is a florist who reads my text and comes to me and says, you know what, why we have so much flowers? You saw it. I tell you why we have good flowers, because our seeds. And then I do the next text, and the next text. And then I come to understand that Milano has a specific lobby-free seed farming industry that is guarding the flowers to be great. But I wouldn't get there if I wouldn't publish and publish and publish and publish and publish, and then the scene of flowers would keep reading my text and the sources would come.
An issue.
Yeah. So it's not like, it all comes together. That's how you build investigations.
Yeah, of course, I totally agree with Jean, because you have to start from somewhere. Of course, you can't go big by starting. You also can, but it's more difficult. Less difficult if you can build knowledge about a certain topic, and also knowledge of some people, and also knowledge on activists. Spent a lot of time all their lives, fighting some issues on which maybe you can spend so much time. And maybe the spark could start from there, or maybe the spark could start from observation. I am obsessed by studying all the neo-fascist, neo-Nazist groups in Italy. I started during Gioventù Meloniana mapping all of them. I also mapped all the people that are involved in this movement, and then I started seeing that a lot of youngsters from the party of our Prime Minister was following them on socials, following some very extremist magazines, and I said, like, they are not moderate. they maybe can have some fascist behavior. This guy that is inside some very important think tank linked to the party, before was a Casa Pound member. Why? How is it possible to this very moderate conservative party to accept those people? And so, after studying a lot of time, years, this topic, I could start doing the proper investigation. But it's not happened in a way or another way. It's a mix of things, as Jen said before.
All right then, thank you very much for your patience and your attention. I'm very flattered, and I hope you have a great time. What time is the show again? It's at 6.